I never imagined the moment that would split my life in two would arrive through the glow of a single text message. It was late at night, the house quiet, my husband asleep beside me. My phone buzzed with a notification. Not mine, his. His screen lit up on the nightstand and curiosity made me glance over. I shouldn't have looked, but something pulled my eyes. The preview alone stopped my breath cold. I can't stop thinking about last night. I miss you already. And the sender? My best friend. My hand froze midair, hovering above his phone. My mind spun out. I couldn't breathe. My best friend. The woman I had trusted with my secrets, my tears, my laughter. The woman who swore she'd always have my back. And here she was, sending messages that sounded like stolen whispers in the dark. I didn't open the thread, yet. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it would shake the whole bed. He stirred in his sleep and rolled away from me, unaware that in that single moment, my world was cracking apart. Right then, I knew my life had shifted into something I could never take back. Before I continue, let me pull you in, because I need to know I'm not crazy. Have you ever discovered a betrayal so deep it made you question reality itself? Comment where you're watching this video from. I want to hear your stories too. Now let me take you back. Because to understand how I ended up staring at that message, you need to know the story of me, of him, and of the friend who became the knife in my back. I met my husband Mark in college. He wasn't flashy or loud, but he had this steady confidence that made me feel safe in a world where I often felt like I was barely holding myself together. He was studying business administration, always buried in case studies and group projects, while I chased a degree in nursing, balancing endless labs and late-night shifts. We were opposites in many ways. He was patient, calm, measured. I was fiery, impulsive, always wearing my emotions on my sleeve. But something about us clicked. He studied me. I inspired him. And from those long nights of study sessions and bad instant noodles, love grew. We built everything together from the ground up. Every date was budget-friendly, pizza slices, park benches, cheap movie nights. But in those moments I felt like the richest girl alive. When he asked me to marry him after graduation, it wasn't with a diamond ring or a fancy proposal. It was on a walk home from the library under a streetlight, where he slipped a simple silver band onto my finger and said, "Let's face life together. No matter what comes." And I said yes. Life wasn't easy after that. We didn't have family money or safety nets. We worked, saved, and clawed our way towards stability. I pulled double shifts at the hospital. He worked long hours at his first corporate job. Some days we barely saw each other, but we always reminded ourselves. It was temporary. The struggle was part of the story we were writing together. Then there was her. Her name was Rachel. We'd been inseparable since high school. The kind of best friend people envied. We finished each other's sentences, shared wardrobes, even planned our future sitting on my bedroom floor with scrapbooks and dreams. When Mark came into my life, she was the first to meet him. And she approved. More than approved, she told me I was lucky. And she was there for everything. She helped me pick out my wedding dress, she stood next to me as my maid of honor, and she toasted us at the reception with tears in her eyes, saying, "I've never seen two people more perfect for each other." I believed her. I believed every word. Looking back now, I wonder if those tears were guilt. If the smile she gave me across the dance floor was already hiding a secret. Mark and I eventually bought a modest house in the suburbs. Nothing grand, but it was ours. We painted the walls ourselves, filled it with mismatched furniture, and promised that one day we'd upgrade. We hosted dinners where Rachel sat at our table, laughing, helping with the dishes, pretending like she wasn't already weaving herself deeper into our lives than she had any right to. For years I didn't notice anything unusual. She was just Rachel. My rock, my confidant. She and Mark got along, sure, but why wouldn't they? He was my husband, she was my best friend. I told myself it was natural for them to get close. But the little cracks started showing long before that text. There were moments, small, fleeting, that I brushed off. Times when I'd walk into the room and see them exchange a glance I couldn't quite place. Times when I'd invite her out for girls' night, but she'd say she was too tired. Only for Mark to mention later that she'd stopped by while I was at work. Times when he'd defend her fiercely in small arguments, even when I was clearly right. I ignored it. I told myself I was paranoid. After all, what kind of woman suspects her best friend of eyeing her husband? It felt unthinkable. But unthinkable things have a way of becoming undeniable truths. And that night, staring at the message glowing on his phone, I realized all those little cracks weren't harmless at all. They were fault lines. And the earthquake had finally arrived. I wish I could tell you I handled it calmly. That I confronted him with poise. That I demanded the truth right then and there. But I didn't. I froze. My mind screamed, my hands shook, but I slipped his phone back down on the nightstand and lay there, pretending to sleep while my entire world tilted. The next morning I tried to carry on like nothing was wrong. I made coffee. I packed his lunch. I kissed him goodbye. But inside I was a storm, replaying that one sentence over and over. I can't stop thinking about last night. What happened last night? Where were they? What were they doing when I thought he was working late? That was the start of my descent into suspicion. The beginning of the loop I couldn't escape. And as I would soon find out, the text was only the first drop in an ocean of lies. The text haunted me like a ghost. I replayed it in my mind at work, while taking vitals, while charting patient notes. My hands moved through the motions, but my mind wasn't in that hospital. It was stuck in my bedroom, staring at that glowing screen. By the time Mark came home that night, I had convinced myself I needed proof. Real proof. Something undeniable. Because one text, as gut-wrenching as it was, could still be explained away, right? Maybe it was a joke. Maybe it was missent. Maybe I was being paranoid. That's what I told myself as I smiled at him across the dinner table, forcing my fork to lift food I couldn't taste. But paranoia doesn't keep you up until 3 a.m. scrolling through his phone bill. And paranoia doesn't notice that one number, the same one I'd seen on that message, appeared again and again. At lunch breaks. After work. Even once at nearly midnight when he told me he'd been too tired to finish paperwork and fell asleep at his desk. Rachel's number. I remember staring at the log, bile rising in my throat, my heart hammering so loud it drowned out every sound. My best friend's number, right there in black and white, tied to my husband's every day. I told myself I needed more. Something concrete. So I started watching. The first clue came on a rainy Tuesday evening. Mark said he had a late meeting at the office. I didn't believe him. Not anymore. So I drove downtown, parking across the street from his building. I sat there in my car, wipers thudding, heart thudding louder. An hour passed. No sign of him leaving. Then finally the doors swung open and there he was. Umbrella in hand, jacket pulled tight. But he wasn't alone. He was with him. Rachel, laughing under his umbrella, walking so close their arms brushed. They looked like more than coworkers, more than friends. They looked like two people sharing a secret. I ducked down in my seat so fast I nearly hit my head on the steering wheel. My whole body trembled. I told myself I was imagining it, that maybe she had business downtown too. But when he kissed her cheek before she walked off into the rain, I knew imagination had nothing to do with it. That night when he came home and smelled faintly of her perfume, I nearly lost it. But I didn't. I swallowed the scream clawing at my throat and tucked it away for later. Because now I wasn't just suspicious. I was investigating. The next weeks were torture. I played the role of loving wife by day, but by night I became a detective. I checked phone records, bank statements. I even started paying attention to the small details, like how his shirt sometimes came home smelling of wine when he claimed he'd been at the gym. Or how Rachel suddenly stopped accepting my invitations for coffee because she was too busy, even though her Instagram stories showed her sipping lattes in cafes across town. Every discovery hurt like fresh glass cutting into skin. But the worst part? The constant back and forth in my head. Am I crazy? Maybe it's innocent. What if I'm ruining my marriage over paranoia? But what about that kiss in the rain? The loop consumed me. And then came the breaking point. It was a Saturday afternoon when Rachel texted me out of nowhere. "Hey babe, I miss you. Let's hang soon." Miss me? Hang soon. The audacity nearly made me laugh out loud. I stared at the message, wondering if she thought I was stupid, if she was covering her tracks, or if she was just mocking me outright. So I replied, "Sure, when are you free?" We met the following Wednesday at our favorite cafe. She hugged me like nothing was wrong, like she hadn't been slipping into my husband's arms while telling me she was buried in work. She ordered her usual caramel latte, smiled at me with those same green eyes that once held nothing but sisterhood. And she lied. "Oh my God, work has been insane," she said, rolling her eyes. "I barely have time for myself these days. I miss you." I wanted to scream, to flip the table, to demand why her work insanity smelled like Mark's cologne. But I didn't. Instead, I smiled, nodded, and asked her about deadlines. I listened to her weave her fake stories, every word digging the knife deeper into my chest. That night when I got home, I pulled Mark's shirt from the hamper and buried my face in it. And there it was again, that faint, sickly sweet perfume. Not mine. Hers. I started keeping a journal then. Every call, every late night, every odd behavior. I wrote it all down. I told myself I'd need a record, a trail of evidence. Because if this went the way I thought it would, I wasn't going to let them gaslight me into believing I imagined it. The journal became my lifeline. One entry read, "He said he was at the gym." Rachel posted a story at the juice bar across the street. Same time. Same night. Another, "He got a new credit card." Saw the statement. "Dinner for two at Ocean Breeze. We've never eaten there. It's too expensive." Guess who tagged the location on Facebook that night? Rachel. The more I dug, the less oxygen I seemed to have. My lungs were tight, my chest constantly burning. But still I couldn't stop. Because the truth was unfolding piece by piece, and once you start pulling at a thread, you can't stop until the whole fabric unravels. The unraveling came faster than I expected. One night, Mark left his laptop open on the kitchen counter. He'd gone to bed, but the screen glowed faintly in the dark. And there it was, an email draft, half-written, unsent. Addressed to her. I can't keep lying to her. It's tearing me apart. I want to be with you. My knees buckled. I gripped the counter to keep from collapsing. My worst fears weren't just paranoia anymore. They were written out in his own words. I didn't sleep that night. I just sat in the kitchen staring at the laptop, at the evidence of betrayal so deep it felt like drowning. And still I told myself I needed more. Something undeniable. Something I could slam down in front of both of them and watch their faces crumble. So I planned. I set up an old phone with a recording app and tucked it into the backseat of his car one morning before he left for work. My hands shook the entire time, but I did it anyway. And that night when I retrieved it, my heart nearly stopped as I hit play. Voices. Laughter. Then her voice. "Wait. Do you think she suspects?" Silence. Then Mark's voice, low, guilty. "Sometimes I think she does. But she trusts us too much to ever believe it." And then the sound of lips meeting. My ears rang. My vision blurred. It was like the world tilted sideways and I was falling into a pit I couldn't climb out of. I had my proof. But proof is only the beginning of revenge. Because once you know the truth, the real question becomes, what are you going to do with it? I didn't press play on that car recording again. I didn't need to. Their voices were lodged in my skull like splinters. Her whisper asking if I suspected, his answer that I trusted them too much. The kind of sentence that rots the foundation of a marriage. But even with a recording, I knew how liars work. They'd call it out of context. They'd say it was a joke, a goodbye peck, something innocent the first twisted to fit my paranoia. I needed evidence that didn't talk. I needed evidence that showed. So I became meticulous. Clinical. I stopped asking where he'd been. I stopped tugging at loose threads in conversation. Instead, I smiled a lot. I laughed at his corny jokes. I made his favorite pasta. I played the part of a woman too busy to notice anything, while writing down every minute he left the house and every minute he came back. When you write it down, patterns introduce themselves. Tuesdays and Thursdays, home late. Fridays, gym bag but no sweat. Every other Saturday, quick coffee with the guys. 2 hours gone, returns with fresh cologne. I didn't confront him. I confronted the data. The next step required something I hated doing. Telling someone. Not a therapist. Not a stranger on the internet. A person who knew us. A person who could look me in the eye and say, "You're not crazy." I called my older sister Dana. Dana lives in Denver now, but she knows me better than anyone. The moment she heard my voice, she said, "What's wrong?" And I almost hung up because what if saying it made it real? But words came anyway, messy and fierce, and spilled the whole story into her quiet breath on the other end. She didn't interrupt. She didn't say, "Are you sure?" She said, "What do you need?" "I need to know I'm not losing my mind," I whispered. "You're not," she said. "I've always liked Mark. But the last time I visited, something felt off with Rachel." She paused. "Remember the barbecue?" She followed him to the garage to get extra lawn chairs. I went in 2 minutes later and they jumped like I'd caught them stealing. I told myself I imagined it. Maybe I didn't. I closed my eyes. That barbecue had been ordinary in my memory. Now my mind replayed it with a cruel director's cut. Rachel's hand brushing his sleeve, Mark not moving away. "I'm coming next weekend," Dana said. "I'll make it about me, tell him I need help with a project. We'll see how he reacts." It helped having a witness. It steadied me enough to do the thing I'd been avoiding. The phone. Not his, he'd gotten better about keeping it pocketed face down with a new passcode he claimed our bank required. I needed her phone. Rachel had always loved the performance of friendship. She'd put her phone on the table during brunch like an accessory, screen lit with 100 little notifications that made her look wanted. We scheduled self-care Sunday, her idea. Nails, coffee, a stroll through the farmer's market. She hugged me tight when we met like she hadn't kissed my husband in the dark, then set her phone between us at the nail bar. "Can I grab a photo?" I asked, picking up the phone before she could, angling it for a selfie. "Of course," she chirped, tilting her head, pixels of her smile blooming. I took the photo, then accidentally tapped open the camera roll. The display of recent images popped up at the bottom. Dogs, avocado toast, and my blood iced over. Mark's truck parked under a hotel awning I recognized from a billboard on the interstate. A boutique place. The kind people book for anniversaries they want to remember. I dismissed the screen fast, snapping 2 more selfies, gushing about the lighting. She never noticed. Later, in the bathroom, I locked the stall and texted myself the photo with her phone. I used the share feature and typed my email from memory. Years of emergency contacts made her phone remember me. The little paper airplane sent the payload. I flushed the toilet to sell the scene, washed my hands until my knuckles burned, and returned with a smile that felt stapled to my face. That night I opened my email like it was a bomb. I clicked the thumbnail and it expanded. The timestamp sat neat in the corner. 3 Thursdays ago. Meeting ran late, Mark had said. The hotel's logo, blue and silver, hung like a smirk over his truck. I stared so long my eyes ached. I saved the photo to a folder I'd started on a flash drive labeled insurance. I added the car audio file, a PDF of phone logs, screenshots of bank charges from places we'd never shared. The folder started to look like a portrait of a marriage from the outside. Clinical, undeniable, heartbreaking. Dana arrived Friday. She hugged me for a long time, then looked at my face like she was reading the fine print. "You've gone quiet," she said. "I'm learning a new language," I answered. "It sounds like silence." We put the next part into motion without saying, trap, because traps are for animals and we wanted to believe the people we loved were better than that. She told Mark she needed help picking out a desk and could he come with her Saturday morning, maybe bring the truck for hauling. He agreed with barely a pause, then texted someone under the table while pretending to check the weather. I went to the garage for a box and cried quietly behind the lawn mower. Saturday dawned bright, uncooperative sunshine washing the kitchen white. Mark kissed my hair and said, "Text me if you need anything," like a man who believes he belongs to two women and is generous enough to share himself. I waited 10 minutes after they left, then grabbed my keys. I wasn't going to the furniture store. I was going to the boutique hotel. If he wasn't there, I'd go home and bake a cake and eat it with my fingers on the floor like a person who had survived her own imagination. If he was there, I would take photographs. Not blurry, not questionable. Photographs that didn't require explanation. My hands shook so much I missed the exit the first time. I circled back, pulled into a lot across the street and watched the front doors like a harbor master. At 10:11 a.m., Mark's truck turned into the drive, sunlight gliding across its hood like an apology. He parked where the cameras would see him because liars always believe truth belongs to other people. A minute later, a rideshare slid in behind him. Rachel stepped out in a sundress I once complimented and a denim jacket we bought together on clearance. She didn't look guilty. She looked happy. They didn't rush. They didn't skulk. They met in the middle like a couple in a commercial, easy and practiced. He touched the small of her back. She looked up at him and smiled with her entire mouth. I took photographs. One after another, fighting the tremor in my hands, framing the hotel sign beside them like a label on a museum piece. Two people lie here. I zoomed in on fingers, on the way his hand didn't hesitate to hold hers, on the way she leaned on him like she had a right. They went inside. I shot the door closing. I shot the clock on my dashboard. 10 minutes passed. 20. 40. At 53 minutes I lost track of my breath and had to roll the window down to let air back into my body. At the 63rd minute, the doors opened and a bellhop wheeled a cart stacked with champagne and strawberries past me. I laughed once, a sound like glass. A text pinged my phone, making my heart slam into my ribs. It was Rachel. "Girl, I'm so hungover from last night. Staying in today. Rain check." I stared at the hotel doors she had just walked through and read the message again like it might correct itself. Then I screenshotted it and added it to insurance. Dana texted next. "Furniture store done." He left me at the cafe. Said he had to run an errand before lunch. An errand. I typed. "He's at the Harbolite Hotel." Then I deleted it. My fingers hovered, then I wrote, "Thank you. Be safe getting home." If I told her, she would come to me. If he came, I would lose the last thin membrane holding me together. At noon they came back out. They didn't walk close this time. They moved with the choreography of caution. She walked ahead, he checked his phone. They kept 3 bodies worth of distance between them like people who had just learned the word consequences. But when she reached the rideshare door, she turned, and they looked at each other for 1 second longer than strangers. A second is enough to destroy things. I pressed my phone shutter until the battery warning came up. I followed Mark home at a shameful distance. The muscles in my jaw felt like concrete. When he came in, he smelled like hotel air, industrial cleaning chemicals and the ghost of other people's nights. He said, "How was your morning?" And my mouth answered, "Quiet." And he said, "We should go somewhere later." And I thought, "Somewhere you haven't taken her? Does that place exist?" The doorbell rang. My body flinched hard enough to knock a spoon off the counter. It was Mr. Pearson, our elderly neighbor, holding a small manila envelope. He always reminds me of what gentleness looks like. "Sweetheart, this was misdelivered," he said, frowning at the handwriting. "Looks like it was meant for you." "For me?" I asked, reaching. "Yes, ma'am," he said. "Saw the mailman put it in our box by mistake. Thought you might need it sooner than later." The envelope had my name written in block letters, no return address. My palms went slick. I thanked him and closed the door with careful slowness. Mark was rinsing an apple in the sink like people in toothpaste commercials. "What's that?" he asked casually, glancing up. "Probably junk," I said and carried it to the bedroom. I locked the door. Inside the envelope were photographs. Glossy color, professionally printed. My stomach dropped, then rose, then dropped again as I flipped through them. Mark and Rachel at a diner sitting on the same side of the booth. Mark and Rachel walking into a movie theater, his hand on her waist. Mark and Rachel on a park bench, his head tipped to hers. The Harbolite Hotel yesterday, today, timestamps neat in the corners like signatures. The last photo ripped the sky off my world. It wasn't them. It was me. I was in my car across from the hotel, camera up, face tight with concentration. The angle was from above like a bird or a god or a drone. Written in Sharpie across the bottom. You deserve better. Get out before they burn you down. My vision tunneled. I sat down on the edge of the bed and held the picture of myself like a mirror. Someone had been watching me watch them. Someone had proof layered on proof and had decided I should have it too. I put the photos in the insurance folder, then moved the folder to a second flash drive and slid that into the lining of my winter coat. I put the envelope with the letter beneath the drawer insert only I knew came out. Then I washed my face and joined my husband in the kitchen, where he bit into an apple and said, "You okay?" Like a man asking if the weather would hold. "I'm fine," I said. "I'm thinking we should invite Rachel for dinner next week. It's been a while." He went very still. It lasted only a second, but in that second I watched 1,000 tiny muscles decide whether to flinch. Then he smiled too quickly. "Sure," he said. "If you want." "I do." I smiled back. "I'll text her." He turned to the sink and I saw his shoulders drop in something like relief, and I knew two things. He believed me still asleep inside the marriage and dinner would be my stage. That night when the house was quiet, I opened our shared laptop and signed into our cloud account. Years ago, when trust was air, we'd enabled device backups to the same family plan. One of those low-stakes decisions couples make that means nothing until it means everything. A loading circle spun. Folders unfurled. And there it was in the device list. A phone I didn't recognize. Not mine. Not his current one. A leftover login he'd forgotten to purge when he upgraded. Same Apple ID, same backup schedule, quietly syncing to the cloud like a conscience. My heart sprinted. I clicked into messages. A warning asked if I was sure. I was past sure. The screen populated with threads that were both familiar and alien. His buddies. His boss. Then one labeled with a name he'd never saved in full. Just a heart and the letter R. I clicked it and the conversation opened into a world where I didn't exist. Long paragraphs. Inside jokes. Photos of wine glasses touching across tables I'd never seen. And then, like gravity, a selfie of them in a hotel mirror, her cheek against his shoulder, his phone held high, the Harbolite bathrobe belts hanging like white ropes behind them. I saved every image. I exported the full thread as a PDF. My breath came in small, controlled sips. When you're a nurse, you learn to breathe like that while your patient bleeds, calm and small, because someone has to be steady. At the very bottom of the thread sat a message from yesterday, hours after I watched them leave the hotel separately like people trying to outrun a camera. It read, "I think she suspects. Dinner next week, she invited you. Play it cool." Rachel's reply, "Always. I love you." In that instant, something holy and feral in me stood up. The grief didn't go away, but it changed shape. It grew teeth. I was done collecting proof in the dark. It was time to turn on the lights. I closed the laptop, walked to the window and lifted the blind a sliver. Across the street, a sedan I didn't recognize sat under the maple tree. The engine idled. A silhouette leaned back from the windshield glow. Maybe the person who sent the envelope. Maybe no one. Maybe paranoia learning to drive. My phone buzzed. It was a video file from an unknown number. No text, just the attachment. The thumbnail was grainy like footage from a security camera. My name pulsed against the glass of the screen, reflected by the dark window. I play. And watched Mark and Rachel argue in the hotel hallway outside room 415. He pushed his chest. He grabbed her wrist. She looked scared. He looked angry. A door opened down the hall and they dropped their hands at the exact same time like magnets freed from each other. The camera angle was high and brutal. The audio was faint, but I could make out one sentence through the hiss. A sentence that blew out the candles of every excuse I still had left. "Stop saying she's fragile," Rachel hissed. "She's not your patient, she's your wife." The video ended with them stepping into the room. The timestamp matched my photos to the minute. My hands went cold. Not because of the fight. Because of the camera. Who had this angle? Who had sent me this? The unknown number pinged again. This time it was a text. "You want the full truth? Meet me tomorrow. Come alone." A location followed, one I knew too well. The park where Mark proposed we face life together. My phone vibrated a third time, and when I looked, my heart bounced against a wall I couldn't see. The new message wasn't from the unknown number. It was from Rachel. "Dinner sounds perfect. Can we do Tuesday? I'll bring dessert." I stared at her message, then at the blinking typing bubble from the unknown number. It formed 3 dots, vanished, formed again like a heartbeat. Finally, a second text arrived. "You already know half the story. Tuesday will destroy the rest." The message from the unknown number didn't leave my mind all night. "You already know half the story. Tuesday will destroy the rest." I lay awake staring at the ceiling, feeling like I was floating between 2 worlds. One where I was still Mark's wife, still Rachel's best friend, still the person who believed in loyalty. And another where I was already something else entirely. An investigator, a strategist, a woman sharpening her own fury into a blade. By morning my decision was made. I was going to that park. The day broke cool and gray, clouds hanging low like heavy curtains. I left the house early, telling Mark I had an extra hospital shift. He kissed my cheek and said, "Don't overwork yourself," in the same gentle voice he used to convince Rachel to keep lying for him. I drove to the park where our love story had begun, where we'd carved our initials into a bench years ago. My heart ached at the memory. Now that place wasn't sacred, it was a crime scene. I parked and waited. At first I thought maybe no one would show. Maybe it was a prank. But then at 9:14 sharp a woman walked toward me. Not Rachel. She was older, maybe mid-40s, with sharp eyes and a face that carried the wear of years spent watching too much. She stopped a few feet from me, hands shoved into her jacket pockets. "You don't know me," she said flatly. "But I know them." My pulse quickened. "Who are you?" "Doesn't matter," she replied. "I work at the Harbolite. Security. I've seen things. Enough to know what they're doing to you isn't just cheating, it's dangerous." "Dangerous?" I echoed, heart hammering. She nodded, pulling out a small flash drive. "I shouldn't even have this, but after watching them, after hearing how they talk about you, I couldn't sit on it. You need to know. They're planning more than you think." I stared at the flash drive, every instinct screaming not to trust her, but curiosity roaring louder. "Why are you helping me?" Her gaze softened for a second. "As I was you once. And I didn't get out in time." She pressed the drive into my hand and walked away before I could ask anything else. Just like that, I was alone again, with a piece of the puzzle burning a hole in my palm. I went home, locked the bedroom door, and slid the flash drive into my laptop. Folders popped up, each labeled with a date. Inside were video files, security camera footage. I clicked the most recent. Mark and Rachel in the hotel bar, heads close, voices low. "She's too trusting," Rachel whispered. "We need to move fast." "I know," Mark said. "But if we screw this up, I lose everything." "Not everything," Rachel smirked. "You'll have me." Another video. Them in the hallway, Rachel's laugh ringing out. Then her voice dropped to a whisper. "She's got savings, right? That account you two opened? If she finds out before we move it, we're screwed." Mark's reply was a growl. "Don't worry. She'll never see it coming." I paused the video, bile rising in my throat. This wasn't just about lust. This wasn't just about betrayal. They were planning to strip me of everything. My heart, my marriage, my money. The betrayal had layers and I had only peeled back the first one. That night, I watched Mark carefully as he moved around the kitchen. His shirt sleeves were rolled up, his hands wet from rinsing dishes. He looked like the man I married. And yet, every time he smiled at me, I saw the man on that video. The man plotting with my best friend to gut my life from the inside out. "Long day?" he asked casually. "Always," I said. I smiled back, hiding the storm in my chest. He didn't notice. Or maybe he did, but believed his performance was better than mine. The escalation began in small ways. He started pressing me about our finances. "Babe, you should let me handle the savings account," he said one evening, settling beside me on the couch. "You're working so much, it's too much stress for you." "Stress?" I asked lightly. "I've been managing our money since college." I know, he said, kissing my temple. "But with my promotion, I think it just makes sense for me to take over. You deserve a break." A break. From the nest egg I had scraped together working 12-hour shifts, overtime, weekends. A break from the one piece of stability that was mine. I smiled, but my voice was steel. "I'll think about it." He didn't push that night. But the seed had been planted. Rachel, meanwhile, doubled down on her best friend act. She started texting me more, inviting me to brunch, sending me memes. It was too much. Too eager. Then one afternoon she slipped. We were having coffee when her phone buzzed. She turned it over quickly, face flashing panic. But not fast enough. I saw the preview. Mark's name with a heart emoji. "You okay?" I asked, sipping slowly, pretending not to notice. "Oh, yeah. Just my cousin," she said, tucking the phone away. I let it slide, but inside I smiled. Every lie was another brick in the wall I was building. Dana came back into town the following weekend. She brought with her something I hadn't realized I needed: perspective. "You're collecting proof," she said as we sat in my kitchen late at night. "But what's your end game? You can't just hoard evidence forever." "I want them to pay," I admitted. My voice cracked. "I want them to feel humiliated, exposed, ruined. The way they ruined me." Dana nodded slowly. "Then you need a stage. Somewhere public. Somewhere they can't spin their lies." Her words planted another seed in me. A dangerous one. The mid-story twist arrived like lightning 2 days later. I was at the hospital finishing up paperwork when my coworker Melanie nudged me. "Hey, your husband was here earlier." My heart stuttered. "Here? At the hospital?" "Yeah," she said. "I saw him in the lobby. Looked like he was picking someone up. Didn't see who, though." I smiled tightly and brushed it off, but inside, alarms blared. Why would Mark be at the hospital during my shift without coming to see me? I checked the visitor log later, using a nurse's badge swipe. Mark's name wasn't there. But Rachel's was. Wait, my hospital. On the very day Mark appeared in the lobby. Wait. I dug deeper, pulling up the patient record she had access to. And that's when my entire world tilted. She hadn't been visiting. She had been admitted. The reason? Pregnancy checkup. The father listed? Mark. I sat frozen in front of the screen, the room spinning. My stomach dropped through the floor, my heart cracking into a million jagged pieces. It wasn't just an affair. It wasn't just money. They were having a child together. And they thought I would never know. That night I didn't cry. Not one tear. Something inside me had gone beyond tears. The grief calcified into rage so pure it almost felt calm. If they thought they were playing me like a fool, they were wrong. They wanted Tuesday dinner? Fine. Tuesday would be their funeral. Not of their lives, but of their lies. Because now I had more than enough proof. I had motive. I had a plan. And soon the world would see them for exactly what they were. I didn't sleep the night after I found out about the pregnancy. My mind didn't race, it organized. I made lists. I made calls from stairwells at the hospital where no one could overhear. I learned that heartbreak can be a sharpened instrument when you refuse to bleed for people who chose your blood. First, the money. I visited the bank on my lunch break with a navy blazer, steady hands, and an expression I'd once used while delivering bad news to a family. Calm, precise, unarguable. I froze the joint account temporarily, citing suspicious activity. The manager nodded fast when I handed over the documents. Screenshots of unusual transfers, credit card charges from places we'd never been together, the boutique hotel's restaurant. I opened a new account in my name only and moved my direct deposit before the next payroll cycle. I set alerts for every $1 that left the joint account. I asked for a printed record with a timestamp and tucked it into a folder labeled household on the outside and war on the inside. Then the paper trail. I found a local notary, quiet office, little bell on the counter, and asked her to notarize a statement that summarized what I'd collected. The text from the cloud, the photos stamped with dates, the hospital record showing Rachel's visit, and the video from the unknown number. She didn't read every line. She just watched my face like people do when the truth is walking into a room with its shoes still on. She stamped the page and slid it back gently as if handing me the lever that moved the world. "Are you safe?" she asked. "I'm done being the one who isn't," I said. "Next, the people. I called Dana. I need you Tuesday night," I told her. "I'm inviting them both to dinner. I need a witness who knows me. And I need you to hold my phone. You'll have more than my hands," she said. "You'll have my eyes." I knocked on Mr. Pearson's door with a blueberry pie I bought and pretended to bake. He opened slow, cardigans and kindness wrapped around him like a habit. I thanked him again for the envelope and asked if he'd mind if on Tuesday he popped over around 7 to return a dish from last week. He smiled like it was a game. "Of course, sweetheart," he said. "Should I bring my hearing aids?" I laughed and didn't explain the joke we were about to make out of people who thought I was deaf. I texted the Harbolite security woman from the number she'd used once, not knowing if she'd answer. "Can you give me one statement in writing? Just one line that the footage is genuine and unaltered." She replied in under a minute. "I'll bring it myself." Tuesday afternoon. Lobby of the public library. She showed up with a sealed envelope and a look that said I survived this kind of war too. I hugged her without asking permission. She let me. Then the stage. I cleaned the living room like I was preparing an altar. I hid the flash drive behind the framed picture from our wedding, the one where Rachel stood beside me in a blush-colored dress with tears in her eyes and a secret on her tongue. I synced the TV to a folder labeled trip photos that held exactly 0 vacations. I tested the slideshow and the sound, then tested it again. I cooked too, because truth tastes better when it arrives with the smell of rosemary and lemon. Roast chicken, potatoes, a salad that felt like summer even though the week tasted like ash. The house filled with a warmth that had nothing to do with the 2 people I'd invited to sit in it. On Monday, Mark hovered more than usual. "You're being sweet," he said, eyeing the marinating chicken as if tenderness had a price tag. "What's the occasion?" "Just us," I said. "And Rachel, of course. It's been too long." His eyes flicked to my face for one fraction of a second. "Yeah," he said. "Too long." He tried the savings talk again, casual like a man asking if I needed toothpaste from the store. "I can swing by the bank tomorrow," he said. "They'll add me as a primary. Less hassle." "I handled it," I answered, drying my hands. "We're good." He swallowed that like a pill he couldn't refuse. "Okay," he said lightly. "Dinner's at 7? 7. I texted Rachel the same. She sent back 3 heart emojis and can't wait. Like a woman RSVPing to the party where she didn't know she was the main course. Tuesday morning, a storm threatened and then changed its mind. The sky stayed clear, bright in that cheap way that looks like happiness from a distance. At noon, the unknown number pinged again. "Tonight changes everything. You have what you need, but you're missing one piece. Check your porch at 5:30. I stared at the message and forced myself not to reply. Whoever they were, they'd stitched themselves into my story with surgical precision. I hated that I needed them. I hated that I didn't know if they were another trap. But I'd learned to work with the truth you have while you wait for the truth you're offered. At 4 p.m. the library lobby smelled like paper and quiet. The security woman was on time, envelope in hand. 1 page, she said. Signed by me and my supervisor. You didn't get this from me. I didn't, I agreed. At 5:30 a small package sat on my porch like a stray idea. No note. Inside a black key fob and a second flash drive. The fob had a hotel logo I recognized. Harbolite. The flash drive had one file. I didn't open it yet. Let some doors wait until you're ready to walk through them. At 6:15 Dana arrived in jeans and the kind of sweater that makes you think of home. She squeezed my fingers and scanned the room the way a good sister reads weather. You sure? She asked. More sure than I've been about anything, I said. Stand here when it's time. Hold your phone like you're filming a birthday song. When I nod, start recording. What about the baby? She asked softly. My jaw clenched. Truth is not a knife I wanted to use, I said. But I won't keep pretending it's a spoon. At 6:55 Mr. Pearson shuffled across the street with an empty casserole dish and a twinkle in his eyes like he'd been waiting his whole widower life to play a part in justice. I thanked him, set him at the end of the couch with a glass of sweet tea, and told him he might witness some loud honesty. He nodded solemnly and turned up his hearing aids. At 7:02 the doorbell rang. Mark walked in with flowers, store-bought peonies in plastic sleeves, petals still half asleep. He kissed my cheek and looked around like a man stepping into a meeting he'd scheduled and might not control. Smells amazing, he said. Thank you, I said. She'll be here any minute. She was. At 7:06, Rachel stepped into my home in the denim jacket we bought together and a maternity top that would look like a simple blouse to anyone not trained to notice the way fabric lays across the beginning of a secret. She hugged me carefully like my body might burn her and set a bakery box on the counter. I brought lemon bars, she chirped. Your favorite. They are, I said and smiled with my teeth. Dinner was delicious and excruciating. Mark complimented the chicken twice. Rachel laughed too loudly at the word rosemary, like it had told a joke. Dana asked about work and kept a straight face when Mark described long hours I knew belonged to a boutique hotel and a woman who wasn't me. Mr. Pearson discussed his tomatoes and the weather and how the neighborhood association fees were going up for the 3rd year in a row. And in between sentences he watched us all like a gentle judge. When plates were cleared I stood. I have a silly idea, I said. A short slideshow. Nostalgia. I found some old photos in the cloud. Remember when we used to do those scrapbooks, Ratch? She blushed prettily. Oh my God, yes. Mark leaned back casual. You and your projects, he teased. Let's see it. I dimmed the lights. Dana moved to the corner, phone in hand, focus steady. I clicked the TV input and the folder labeled trip photos. The first image filled the screen. Our wedding day, Rachel's hand on my bouquet, Mark's grin open and young. The second, our first apartment, cheap couch, paint on our noses. The third, a black screen that looked like a technical mistake. I let it sit there for 2 heartbeats, then it bloomed into a still from the hotel hallway, timestamp neat in the corner. Rachel and Mark in crisp high angle, her wrist in his hand, her mouth open mid-whisper. She's not your patient, she's your wife. No one spoke. Mark made a sound like a chair leg scraping tile. Rachel's fingers clenched the hem of her blouse. Mr. Pearson adjusted his hearing aids. Dana did not breathe. I clicked again. The mirror selfie appeared. Rachel's cheek to Mark's shoulder, white robe belts hanging like ropes behind them. The hotel entrance, his truck parked under the sign. The hallway again, different day, his mouth on her forehead. The bar, their heads too close to pretend the music was loud. Stop, Mark said, voice low, throat raw. Where did you? From the cloud, I said softly. From a security camera. From a stranger who decided I deserved better. From the truth that doesn't need your permission to stand. Rachel found her voice first. This is insane, she said. You're twisting things. We were. Having an affair, I finished. And planning to empty my savings. Oh, and one more thing. The hospital log lists you as a patient last week. Congratulations. Her hand flew to her stomach before she could stop it. Mark's eyes flicked there, a tiny movement that confessed more than words. I didn't look at him. I looked at her, the woman who toasted my marriage and then watered the weeds around it. You will listen, I said evenly. And then the people in this room will decide what they saw. I lifted the remote. But first dessert, I added lightly, and the room's tension cracked just enough for air to move. I opened the bakery box and set the lemon bars on the coffee table. No one reached for them. I took a breath and put the flash drive from the porch into the TV's side port. The file name was a date. Yesterday's. My thumb hovered over the OK button. Before I play this, I said, I should tell you the bank froze the joint account. The notary stamped a statement. The neighbor delivered evidence. The security team confirmed chain of custody. And my sister is filming, because when lies fall apart they scream that they were never standing. Mark's face went white. Turn it off, he said, trying for calm and landing on pleading. We can talk about this, just us. Not like this. Rachel reached for his hand. He pulled it back on instinct, and the hurt that flashed across her face looked almost human. Like this, I said and pressed play. The screen flickered. A hotel room appeared in crisp, quiet detail. Not the hallway inside. The angle from the ceiling near the smoke detector, the kind of camera no guest ever notices. Rachel stood beside the bed, arms crossed, jaw tight. Mark paced, hair messy, voice clear as a bell as he said, We have to move the money before she figures it out. Rachel's answer was colder than any winter I've lived through. Then marry me after, she said. Or I'm done protecting you. He stopped pacing. I said I would. She tilted her head. Say it like you mean it. He moved closer. I will. The audio went quiet for a beat. Then the door opened in the video and a third person stepped in. Someone I hadn't expected, someone who knocked the breath out of the room and scattered it like confetti. It wasn't a stranger. It was a face I knew. And as the figure closed the door, turned toward the camera without knowing, and smiled at the two of them like they were co-conspirators in a church, my hand went numb around the remote. The video voice said, cheerful and easy, You two really need to be more careful. The figure was my mother. The room went silent in a way that made the walls pulse. The only sound was the faint whir of the ceiling fan, spinning useless air above a table that had become a courtroom. On the screen, my mother stood there in that hotel room, smiling like she belonged, her voice casual as though she hadn't just detonated my reality. Rachel's hand dropped from her stomach. Mark's mouth opened, closed, then opened again. What is this? He stammered, his voice breaking. But the video continued. My mother crossed her arms, watching them. You two are reckless. The cameras catch everything. Do you want her finding out sooner than planned? Rachel laughed nervously. She trusts me too much to suspect anything. And she trusts me, my mother added, lowering her voice. So if she asks questions, I'll handle them. But you better make sure she never checks that account herself. You need to move fast. My vision blurred, but I forced myself to keep watching. Mark ran a hand down his face. We're working on it. She's just always watching lately. Suspicious. My mother's lips pressed into a thin smile. Then keep her busy. Distract her. You're lucky she's naive. She's always been easy to guide. The video ended there, cutting off into a black screen that felt heavier than anything I had seen so far. I stood frozen, my mind a battlefield of rage and disbelief. My mother. My own mother. The silence in the room broke with Mr. Pearson clearing his throat gently, as though trying to bring oxygen back. Dana's phone trembled in her hand as she whispered, "Oh my God." Rachel shifted in her seat, clearly rattled but quick to recover. This is edited. Has to be. She's manipulating you with fake footage. Fake. I repeated, my voice sharp. I know my mother's voice, Rachel. You can't fake the way someone has said your name since childhood. Mark finally found his words. Listen, honey. Don't you dare call me that. My voice shook with fury. You had an affair. You tried to rob me. And now I see that you've been conspiring with my own blood against me. Rachel rose from the couch, panic spilling into her words. She wanted this. Your mom pushed us. She said you'd never be enough for him, that you'd cling to him like dead weight. She said it would be better for everyone if you let go. My stomach churned, but I kept my face stone. I turned to Dana. You heard that? She nodded, eyes wide, her camera catching every word. Mark's face twisted, desperation pouring out. No, Rachel's lying. She's spinning it because she's scared. I never. Save it. I cut him off. You think I don't know about the savings account? About the transfers? About the baby? The room detonated again in silence. Rachel's face drained of color. Mark stared at me like I'd peeled away his skin. You knew, he whispered. I knew everything, I said steady. And I gave you the chance to bury yourself with your own hands. Rachel burst into tears, the kind of sobs meant to tug at sympathy, but no one moved to comfort her. Not Dana. Not Mr. Pearson. Not me. My hands itched to throw them out of my house, but I wasn't done. Not yet. I pulled the notarized statement from the folder and placed it on the table like a judge delivering sentence. Every piece of evidence you've seen tonight is documented, notarized, and backed up in multiple places. There's no spinning this. Not anymore. Mark leaned forward, his voice desperate. Please, let's talk privately. We can fix this. I love you. I laughed bitterly. Love? You plotted to steal from me, to humiliate me, to replace me. That's not love. That's treachery with a wedding band. Rachel sniffled, her hand returning to her stomach as if the baby could shield her from the truth. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. Funny, I said coldly. That's exactly what I thought when I married him. Dana stepped closer to me, her presence grounding. Enough, sis, she murmured. But I wasn't finished yet. I clicked the remote once more. A new file loaded, the one from the porch package. The video played in that same hotel room. This time it wasn't my mother speaking first. It was Rachel. What about her inheritance? She asked Mark. Mark's face twisted. What about it? She doesn't even know she has access to it yet, does she? Rachel pressed. No, my mother's voice cut in. And she won't unless you two screw this up. That money isn't hers anyway. Not really. He was never meant to control it. She's too weak. I felt my knees go weak. Inheritance? What inheritance? Mark scrubbed his hand over his face. So we keep her in the dark. When the time comes, we make sure the paperwork shifts where it should. Exactly, my mother said firmly. She'll never see it coming. The video ended. The room was a graveyard of sound. My hands shook as I turned toward Mark. What inheritance? His eyes darted away, then back. I didn't want to tell you until the time was right. The time was right when my father died. I shouted. The time was right when I was working double shifts to pay bills while you were planning hotel dates. My mother's betrayal wrapped around me tighter than Mark's ever could. She had raised me to believe I wasn't enough, and now I had proof she'd been saying it behind closed doors too. Answer me, I demanded. Mark opened his mouth, but before he could, Mr. Pearson's gentle voice filled the space. You know, he said slowly, sometimes the people closest to us hold the sharpest knives. But you've got the truth now. Don't let them twist it back around. I nodded at him, tears finally breaking free. Rachel wiped her face, glaring at me. You think you've won tonight, but you've ruined everything, for all of us. Don't act like you're innocent. You're just as much to blame. You pushed him away, you worked too much, you left cracks wide open for me to fill. My laughter cut her off, sharp as glass. Blame me? You slithered into my life, pretended to be my sister, toasted at my wedding, and now you're carrying the consequence of your betrayal. That's not my fault. That's yours. Mark buried his face in his hands, mumbling something I couldn't catch. I stepped closer, my voice cold. You too wanted an audience? You have one. You wanted to play with my life. You've lost it. Every second of tonight is on record, and when it leaves this house, it won't just be whispers. It'll be headlines. Rachel's head snapped up. You wouldn't. Oh, I would, I said, fire in my chest. And I will. I turned to Dana. Send it. Her thumb tapped the screen, uploading the video to a private group we'd prepared. Family, coworkers, neighbors. The ripple began instantly. Notifications pinged my phone like fireworks. Rachel's sobs turned to screams. Mark begged. Mr. Pearson stood steady, a witness who would never forget. But even as their world fell apart, mine shifted again. Because my phone buzzed with a new message from that unknown number. You've exposed the affair. You've exposed the money. But the real betrayal isn't over. Check your father's will. Then you'll understand everything. The room blurred around me. The affair, the baby, the theft, they were only symptoms. The disease went deeper. Into bloodlines. Into lies I hadn't even uncovered yet. And for the first time that night I realized. This wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. I didn't feel triumphant after the exposure. I felt emptied out, like the tide had finally gone out and left behind everything it had been hiding. Mark stood there white-faced. Rachel clutched her stomach like it could shield her from consequences. And my phone kept blooming with messages from the private group. Shock, sympathy, anger. Mr. Pearson squeezed my shoulder before leaving, solid and kind. Dana locked the front door behind him and turned back to me. You good? She asked softly. No, I said. But I'm ready. The unknown number's last message pulsed in my mind. Check your father's will. That night, after they were gone, after Rachel fled to her car sobbing and Mark stormed out with a bag he threw together like a coward, I pulled a file box from the hall closet. Paper has a weight to it. History does too. I set my father's estate binder on the table and turned pages until the legalese sharpened into meaning. A clause I didn't remember, or maybe never read closely enough then, jumped out. My father had left a trust that converted into my full control on my 35th birthday, unless the trustee determines the beneficiary is under undue influence by a spouse or parent acting in bad faith. In that case, the trust retained protections, and any attempt to redirect assets without my written consent would trigger an audit and legal review. Undue influence. Spouse or parent. Bad faith. My hands shook as I found a letter tucked behind the clause in my father's neat, stubborn handwriting. If you're reading this at a time of trouble, I want you to remember who you are. Steady, kind, stronger than you think. I could never control what people might do to you. But I can build guardrails so you don't fall. He had signed it with the same looping flourish he used on birthday cards. I called the trustee first thing in the morning. A measured voice answered, I've been waiting for this call. Waiting? I asked. There were attempts in the last 3 months to obtain preliminary access using a spousal declaration and a family advisor affidavit, he said carefully. Neither matched your signature and neither satisfied our verification standards. We flagged them and prepared to notify you. Who submitted them? I asked, even though I already knew. A Mr. M, claiming spousal authority, and a Ms. R, claiming to act on the advice of your mother. My stomach turned, but my spine straightened. Freeze everything. Begin the audit. My attorney will contact you by noon. By noon he had. Dana's friend put me in touch with a family law attorney and an estate litigator who spoke in calm, unhurried sentences that made me feel less like a bomb and more like a person again. We filed for legal separation that day with grounds well documented. We filed a petition to preserve marital assets and a motion for exclusive use of the house pending divorce. We delivered a cease and desist to Rachel for any contact outside counsel, and a preservation letter to Harbolite to retain all footage. My mother got a letter too, short, clinical, stating that all discussions regarding my father's estate must flow through counsel. Then came the police statement. I didn't accuse anyone of crimes I couldn't prove, but I documented unauthorized access attempts, potential identity fraud, and conspiracy to commit financial exploitation. The detective reviewed my notarized packet, the videos, the text logs, the bank flags. He did not promise justice. He promised to investigate. I could work with that. The fallout arrived quickly. Mark's employer received the neighborhood video viral version of Family Emergency. HR asked for a meeting. I didn't send them the hotel footage. I'm not cruel in ways that harm bystanders. But gossip moves faster than evidence, and he took personal leave that his team understood without being told. Rachel's office, my old hospital, saw the patient log screenshots circulate like fire. He took time off too. People who had once tagged us in brunch photos stopped tagging. The world gets small when the truth gets big. My mother called 5 times. I didn't pick up. When she finally left a voicemail, her voice was tight, outraged, performative. You are humiliating yourself. Delete whatever that was. This is a family matter. I stared at the transcript and saved it to a folder named Boundaries. She showed up at my door 2 days later anyway, tapping like a queen expecting entry. I opened it and stepped onto the porch. I'm not letting you in, I said. You're my daughter, she snapped. Stop this nonsense. Were you in that hotel room? I asked. A flicker so fast it might have been wind. I have always done what's best for you. Plotting my financial incapacitation is not best for me. I kept my voice steady. You taught me loyalty. You forgot to teach yourself integrity. Her nostrils flared. You always were dramatic. And you always were cruel, I said. You don't get to stand in my doorway and rewrite the script. This conversation is over. Any further contact goes through my attorney. You'll regret this, she hissed, but there was fear under the hiss. I already regret the years I believed you loved me the way a mother should, I said softly and closed the door. I cried then. Not for Mark. Not for Rachel. For the mother I wanted and never had. Grief sometimes looks like anger. Sometimes it looks like a quiet floor and a woman finally telling the truth to her own heart. The unknown number texted again that night. Proud of you. For the will, ask the trustee to check Addendum C. It proves intent. I called the trustee in the morning. He sounded almost pleased. I hoped you'd ask. Addendum C is a letter your father wrote to me after a tense conversation with your mother. He was worried someone would pressure you later. He set a trigger. If a spouse and parent attempted any coordinated changes without your presence, we hold everything, alert counsel, and ask the court for guidance. He paused. It's very strong. Thank you, I said, and meant it for a dead man who somehow still shielded me. By the way, he added, our firm hired a private investigator after the first suspicious attempt. We didn't share because nothing had reached the threshold. But if you've been receiving recordings, that may be the PI. He was instructed to document any coercion. He took the hotel footage from public vantage points and internal recordings available to the paying party, the hotel. Anonymized, lawfully obtained. The unknown number, I whispered. Likely, he said. He'll contact your counsel. The final twist clicked into place with a sound I felt in my bones. My father's protective clause, a trustee who saw patterns forming, a PI who slid proof to me when I needed courage more than explanations. The universe hadn't abandoned me. It had been rolling a safety net under the high wire while I walked it with my eyes closed. The legal calendar filled. Temporary orders granted me exclusive use of the house and a freeze on major transactions. Mark texted apologies that tried on different costumes. Remorse, rage, bargaining. I didn't answer. Rachel sent one message, short and sharp. You ruined 3 lives. I typed and erased 3 different replies before settling on the only one that was true. I exposed what you did. My mother's lawyer wrote a letter heavy with words like misunderstanding and miscommunication. Mine replied with exhibits. The courthouse prefers exhibits. Healing wasn't cinematic. It was a schedule. Therapy on Tuesdays. Running on Thursdays. Coffee with Dana and sunlight on my face whenever it found me through the kitchen window. I took down the wedding photo and replaced it with a picture of the ocean I took on a solo day trip. The horizon clean, the water honest. Neighbors waved a little longer. Mrs. Goodwin from 2 doors down left a plant on my porch with a note, for new roots. Mr. Pearson brought tomatoes and declared them evidence that good things can still grow. He winked. I nearly laughed. One morning, I woke and realized I hadn't checked my phone in my sleep. I stood up without the weight of dread on my chest. That's all healing is sometimes. One unremarkable morning that would have been impossible a month ago. The court date for preliminary matters came and went. Mark's attorney tried to paint me as vindictive. My packet, my notarized chain, my bank freezes, the trustee's testimony, they painted a clearer picture. The judge's eyes were steady when she reminded everyone that marriage licenses are not licenses to exploit. The estate issue moved in parallel. An independent review confirmed attempts to access my trust. The court reaffirmed my control and admonished any party acting in coordination to subvert the beneficiary's autonomy. Legal sentences can sound like lullabies when you've been living in a storm. And then there was the baby. I told my attorney I wanted no say, no interference, no litigation around paternity. Not my child. Not my decision. But I sent one message through counsel. When that child is old enough to ask questions, I hope they get answers kinder than the choices that made them. The world has enough inherited pain. It doesn't need mine added to it. I didn't hold a press conference. I didn't set anything on fire but old habits. The private group had been enough to keep gossip contained but consequences public. The video stayed in a cloud you can't bribe and a folder labeled truth on a drive that lives where thieves don't think to look. Months later, the divorce decree came through. Cling. Clear. My name on the house. My accounts under my control. The judge's final line read, "Both parties are enjoined from disparaging the other in public forums." I smiled. I didn't need disparagement. I had reality. I met the PI once at a cafe near the courthouse. He was younger than I expected, with kind eyes and a careful way of sitting. He apologized for the shock of the first messages and slid a final manila folder across the table. Documented chain of custody, receipts for footage, a simple note. "Your father asked us to protect your choices, not make them. You did the rest." After he left, I sat there with my coffee going cold and realized the story I just lived wasn't about betrayal at its core. It was about consent to one's own life. About saying, "You don't get to write me small." Not lovers, not friends, not family. I still keep the winter coat with the flash drive in its lining. Not because I think I'll need it again, but because sometimes you keep a relic to remember the dragon you already slayed. If you're listening to this and you're sitting in a room where things don't add up, where your gut whispers look again, this is me telling you. You are not crazy. Collect facts. Protect yourself. Call the bank. Call a lawyer. Call a friend who remembers your laugh from before they tried to erase it. You won't get your old life back, but you might get a truer one. My moral: love doesn't hide in hallways or hotel mirrors. Real love doesn't require you to shrink to fit the story. And if someone tries to cash your future without you, you're allowed to flip the table and start again. I did. And the horizon is honest. Did you like my story? What would you have done in my place, and which city are you listening from? Don't forget to subscribe to my channel for more stories.